interpreter, and I'm very happy to be here with you. We're gonna do this a little bit differently than we usually do because I'm pulling the chart for the winter solstice because it's today and it's Sunday. I usually pull for the energy of the week. I pull for Sunday at 7 a.m. because that is when, in my tradition, we consider it to be, or the tradition in which I work, we consider it to be that's like the start of the day instead of midnight. So that's when I usually pull for at 𝗪𝗻 point, which is as close as you can get to Null Island on the I use Mastering the Zodiac for my true sidereal insights, but I would use Null Island if I could. But so I actually already pulled the energy I pulled the tarot for the energy of the week on TikTok, the clock app, and I'm now just clarifying and looking at the astrology. It's not going to be that different, but the winter solstice is like a bigger thing that we kind of want to talk about. This week, to the 28th, we have in what is this called? In tropical astrology on the 24th at 4:26 p.m. or 16:26 Greenwich Mean Time, Venus entering tropical Capricorn. And that will mainly affect the social world. That's kind of how I see it, is like tropical astrology more so affects the social world. Whereas sidereal is more your inner life, and true sidereal is like soul level stuff. So yeah, that's definitely what we're thinking about. And if I'm remembering my stuff correctly, Venus isn't necessarily the happiest in Capricorn. It's not necessarily its strongest in Capricorn. Hold up just a second, because I'm gonna make sure that my window is closed. So I'm gonna put this on here. I apologize, but my room's really cold right now, so I want to make sure the window's closed. Yeah, it is. I'm gonna turn my fan down though. The fan's mainly to help protect my privacy. Anyway, here we go. Sorry. So that actually might be a message, honestly, that there might be a lot of mishaps and hiccups, and it's gonna be a bumpy ride. That's a song by the 𝗪𝗁 that I'm hearing. The 𝗪𝗁, I don't think that they, hi, hello, how's it going? I don't think that they ever made it to the United States. They were very popular in the UK, like when I first started going over there when I was 15, but that's the song that I'm channeling. It's gonna be a bumpy ride, but it sure beats standing still. I know we can work it out. Thank you. I don't remember what, 𝗪𝗻. I think I got them on 𝗪𝗻. We are talking about the winter solstice and the energy for the week. So yeah, but it sure beats standing still. I know we can work it out, and I know that we will. So that is definitely a message. There's gonna be a lot of hiccups and ups and downs, I would say, especially with transportation, especially anything that's related to Mercury is what I'm picking up. And it has been a very Mercury retrograde type energy lately, despite the fact that it's over and I'd say that we're out of the shadow period. But I am definitely picking up that a lot of this has to do, with the coronal mass ejections that we're experiencing. And part of that is because we know for a fact that the solar flares affect the grid for digital technology. We know this for a fact. There was a mass event that happened in Canada back, I think in the 80s, where it wiped the power out, a solar flare wiped the power out, and I believe that's called a Carrington event. But a lot of what is happening is, and I'm being taken back actually to this period of time, I think it was earlier this year or last year, when there were a lot of like airlines were not able to fly, not because of the shutdown, but because there was just like tech mishaps going on. And so that's a lot of what I'm picking up right now, is that there's going to be a lot of tech mishaps going on. And I'm not following the news too closely right now, but I do think that something like that happened in Chicago. I think there's a lot of stuff that's like been going on with like fires and weather and stuff like this, but there's going to be a lot of like tech mishaps. So I would recommend to you, leave for work early, leave for whatever you need to do early. I would say like Mercury retrograde rules apply right now. You know, double check that your devices are charged. I would also encourage you to yeah, surveillance is something that I'm picking up. So like if you're feeling like there's a lack of privacy, that's something that you're going to want to address. I'm going to be right back because I'm going to turn my fan up. But yeah, so there's a lot of contention that's happening, as well as like these systems and these realities are kind of splitting. In a sense, there's like a singularity point that's happening, where what I wanted to say was duality, but what I'm picking up is actually a singularity. It's as if you've ever seen this is going to be very much like Gnostic ideas and things like this, and I might want to grab my book of shadows so that I can draw some examples for you all. Well, I definitely want to grab my book of shadows, so I'm gonna draw some examples for you all. And maybe I'll just use my iPad because it's a little bit, it'll light up and you'll be able to see it. There's an image that I would usually use for this. How is my iPad on 5%? Actually, that kind of makes sense. Okay, so let me show you all what I'm talking about, and let's make sure my pen is connected. Okay. Oh no, it's not. I'm gonna use my just my regular book of shadows. Let's find a blank page. This page will work. Okay, and a good writing utensil. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate it. Let me break out my markers, because I feel like that'll make it easier to be able to see what I'm doing. But so let's do cobalt blue. So what I'm seeing is like, I think this is like referred to sometimes as 𝗪liche𝗶𝗴. So where there was a duality before, it may have felt like there were two separate worlds that we were living in. And I kind of refer to this sometimes as like being on the fence, having one foot in one world and one foot in the other. And I've talked about this before as like, this is being, it's like when people are like, oh, I'm of two minds, you know what I mean? But being of two minds. And oh, it actually reminds me of like that episode of Rick and Morty where every time they didn't make a decision and they weren't clear on what they wanted to do, they would like split into multiple different realities. So finally they had to like get onto one reality by making a decision about what they were going to do. And that's 100% what I'm picking up here, because when we are living a false life, when we're not being true to ourselves, we are living in multiple different timelines, and this is very exhausting. This is also going to run your money down. This is going to result in you having less energy, which is your currency, it is your power, and it's going to cause more problems for you, more conflict you'll come into, obviously, because if you're living a lie, that's duh. But it's also going to be, yeah, if you're having money issues, you might want to consider how authentic you're being, how genuine you're being, because even though there will be resistance on the road to living in your divine counterpart reality, and here in the Aetherium, the divine counterpart is not necessarily a romantic partner, it's all aspects of your life. It is the timeline that you're living in, it's the universe that you're living in. And so what I'm picking up is that we have been existing in this space where we are in part in our desired reality, and then in part in this undesired reality. And really what I pick this up as is like, I think I'm using the right terminology, the pleroma, and then there's the demiurge, and then this other part is like this part that this hell realm, I guess you could say, and we don't want to be in that space. And when I'm saying this, I'm very much thinking ethereally, energetically, consciousness wise. This is the divine counterpart. This is like the hell realm, the karmic life. And this is where we are when we're in that in between. And instead of it being like they're splitting off, which is also happening because all things are happening at once in a quantum universe, we're coming into union at this time. Some people refer to this as 𝗪tože marriage, yeah. And so we're coming into union, and in this experience of coming into union, we're casting off, we're sloughing off all of the spiritual detritus and the karmic baggage, this shedding of skin that I talked about in the overall energy for the week. That's what we're shedding off of. And getting rid of and dumping out. That's what we have been getting rid of. And if you've been experiencing a lot of conflict in the world around you, it's because these karmic timelines, of course they don't want you to leave. Of course they don't want to let go of you. You are powering them, because this doesn't have any life on its own. It is not generative. It is dead, so to speak. And you, being living, have to make that choice between, am I going to be in the land of the living, or am I going to be in the land of the dead? And this is where we are when we're making that choice constantly. But this is collapsing. All of this is collapsing. So we're just coming into this being one thing. Whoever's stuck in this collapsing energy here, this karmic energy, that's where they are. They're stuck there. Like, and that's too bad for them, but that's not our concern. We're not here to worry about that. So that's a lot of what is causing these mishaps that are manifesting, because of course, as we know, it happens in the immaterial, and then as the energy slows down, that is how it begins to materialize. And that's why it's very important to know where you are in your mind, be in your integrity, know what you are contributing your energy and your focus to, because that's what you're going to manifest. That's where you're going to end up at over time. Okay, so this Mercury retrograde, the energy that I was talking about, there's gonna be chaos all around us. And I feel this right now. Like, you know, as I said, I haven't really been keeping up too much with the news. I am in grad school, so I've had finals that I had to pay attention to, and it's been a really busy past couple of weeks for me in general. But it's also because I don't feel it has felt like draining and it has not been generative for me. I already know what's going on. So like all of the fine details, I'll check in like once a week. But when I do those once a week check-ins, what I end up seeing is that, you know, there is tremendous chaos that is going on in the world around me, whether that's with other people who are addicted to drama or living a mundane life, and or whether that's with you know, the larger systems in the world. But for me, like when I choose for there is peace in my life, and 144 on the timer and 444 on the timer, there's peace in my life when I choose for there to be, because that's something that I'm cultivating within myself. There's something coming up about alcohol. So I would say that there's a message of like, be mindful that you're not overdoing it and overindulging in this time. I know that's a very easy thing to do in this time. It's the holiday season, probably getting invited to a lot of holiday parties. But that was something that came up in the initial reading as well, which is like being mindful that like we are having this reserve of our energy, because it's not infinite and we need it more than anything or anyone else needs it. We need to hold this reserve of our energy. It's a time of rest. It's a time of rejuvenation, because in the larger reading overall we got Temperance and the Ace of Pentacles in reverse. This is an ongoing process. A process is active. That means energy is being expended. So you know, of course you can be like, oh, well, you know, it's, if you're in the northern hemisphere, it's winter time. Now officially it's winter time. And like, I'm tired, the sun's not out, blah, blah, blah. But beyond that is, I'm picking up malaise, and that's a word that's been coming up a lot this week. I did open readings at a market yesterday, and that was a word that came up in a lot of the readings. There's this malaise around what is happening in the world. But beyond that, once again, at its core, in a deeper sense, this is about what's happening in the cosmos and what has happened in the cosmos. Okay, the DSE has lost. The adversarial entity has lost, and it knows that. And when that happens, there's a crash out that happens. It's just like when they were circling around the walls of Jericho, blowing the, and did we get Judgment in the reverse? No, that was for a different reading that I did. On the clock app, if you want to go watch that tarot guidance. But there's the walls of Jericho coming down when they were like blowing the horn. But then I'm also hearing make a joyful noise to the, I don't use the rhetoric of Lord. I don't like that. I'm not going to get into why, but I don't use that. But I'm going to say what I'm channeling as I've known it, hearing it growing up. Make a joyful noise to the Lord with, make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the earth. And that, I'm going to find it in this deck so that I can show you on the Judgment card what I'm talking about. The trumpeteers playing, and I believe that this is like on most Judgment cards in most tarot decks, is these people who are being risen from the dead, because this is a resurrection that is happening. Crystalline Collective, yeah, definitely go watch that other, if it feels resonant, go watch that other reading that I did on the clock app, because it definitely will apply here. But being risen from the dead, like leaving this hell realm, as it were. And because of our choices, it is a choice that we have to actively make every single day, every moment of every day, every decision that we make. It is going to be like, and that's something that's karma, you know what I mean? That is us. And to an extent, we're entering into a state of moksha because of us making that decision. Not all of us. The karmics are going to stay in hell, and there's no getting out of that for them in terms of like coming into this like 5D new earth, because the gates the gates have closed is what I'm picking up. But this is judgment, and the reverse, these are the horns. They're coming from the sky, and these bodies of the dead are being risen up. And yeah, the sun is rising. So, you know, it's been a very karmic time coming out of the 𝗪 into the 𝗪 Yuga. Like, these are the Yuga cycles that I'm talking about. Yuga is a way that people who speak English often will say it, but in the Yuga cycles, in the 𝗪 Yuga is what we're moving into. That is to say, the age of Aquarius. And this is liberation. And this is the abolition work that we've been doing, because what is Christ consciousness? It is abolition. It is freedom from bondage. It is freedom from this slavery that we've experienced. And this slavery, oftentimes it looks like addiction. I'm gonna look through this deck to find the devil card, because I just shuffled it, so now I've lost it. But the devil card speaks of being in bondage, because that's the choice that we're making, and that's why I'm talking about karma. This is the karmic timelines are over. So it's really about, like, in that time period that we've been going through, like, have we chosen to stay in, to continue these actions that do not bear fruit? I'm hearing the term fornication, but actually I'm hearing this song by 𝗁cie𝗀𝗶𝗰, what to do for pleasure. What is that song? 𝗁cie𝗀𝗶𝗃. The problem of the leisure. I'm looking up the lyrics. That song is in that's not it. That song is in Marie Antoinette. Natural's not in it. Oh my, boom, right there. Natural, or nature's not in it. Natural's not in it. This life that's unnatural, that goes against the laws of nature, that, like, has us in a state of, like, being antithetical to humanity, which is self-destruction. And so this is why the idea of addiction came up, the idea of, like, drinking too much. And it's not necessarily even, like, you know, being, it might not be alcohol, but it's some other substance that's giving you dopamine or oxytocin, whether that's codependency, whether that's, you know, corn, whether that's food, you know, sugar, what have you. But the problem of leisure, what to do for pleasure. Ideal love, a new purchase, a market of the senses, dream of the perfect life, economic circumstances, the body is good business, sell out, maintain the interest. Remember Lot's wife. Lot's wife was told, they were told not to turn around and look back at Sodom and Gomorrah while it was being destroyed. Or they would turn into a pillar of salt, and Lot's wife turned into a pillar of salt because she turned around, and they had to go on without her. Renounce all sin and vice, dream of the perfect life. This heaven gives me migraine. The problem of leisure, what to do for pleasure. I'm just gonna, like, talk a little bit, like, because I think it's, I'm gonna yap for a second. Lately I've been thinking about identity a lot. This is something that's come up here in the Ethereum often in the past few years as I've gone through my Saturn return, and I'm entering into, like, on the clock app, like on my personal page, a lot to do with the alternative realm over there, and having identified as emo in my youth, and then becoming more indie, and just, like, always being punk. at the core of it, because that is my, as an abolitionist, like that is my ethos, and so I express myself in that way. But like certain changes, lifestyle changes that I made, shifted the way that I express myself, and shifted the way that I sartorially, yes, also like the way that I engage with others, the way that I speak about things as I stepped into my authenticity. And this definitely applies, this is something that we're talking about here. And you know, being around more people who identify that way, and this immature thing that people will sometimes do where they're like basically trying to like G-check you, of like, oh, are you really emo? Are you really alt? And it's like, dude, grow up. Like, are you 12 years old? Are you 14 years old? Like, you gotta let that go. You know what I mean? And I think that that's like really important here, because when we're in this space of, I'm gonna call it the dead world actually, because that, like, I love, what is it called? Adventure Time. And I'm gonna call this the land of the living. And if you think of it, I'm thinking about the Babylonian, like Mesopotamian pantheon, but she who shall not be named was the ruler of the land of the dead, because she was abducted from, she is abducted by the dragon 𝗪 and dragged down to the underworld, and then on their wedding night he died. And they were like, stay and be our queen, and she did, because she decided to do that. That was her choice, and that's very important to note. That is also the story of Persephone, but that was her choice that she made to stay down there. And so there is the land, the dead world, the land of the dead. It has its own ruler. So when they talk about like who rules this material realm, which is this middle ground here, this makes me think about Asgard and 𝗵𝗪 and the Rainbow Bridge, which is that 4D crystalline consciousness, Christ consciousness. But it's not just that, it's like the river that I talk about, that I mention. And when I think about, I'm not being given like the okay to use this language here, but yeah, that river that I talk about, where I've said before, and this came up in the reading earlier, of like, stop going to the wells. When the well has run dry, you run to another well, but like, stop going to the well and run and go to the source, which is the river. The river deity is the one who gives life. Ultimately, the ocean deity is the one that holds life. It's the container for life. But the river deity gives life, because you cannot survive on ocean water. Unless you can desalinate it, you cannot survive on ocean water. We have to be able to drink fresh water, potable water. And where do we get that from? We get that from the river. So, Christ consciousness, it relates to rivers, which is why Yeshua like relates to the river. Yeshua relates to a lot of like 𝗪𝗪 and other river deities. And this is something I've reposted, this video from a 𝗪𝗪 priestess on the Clock app. I'm not going to repost it on here, because like, you can just look it up. I don't remember what her name is right now, but my teacher Paulvin also talks about this. Christianity in its origin actually is about this crystalline realm, and it is ultimately it is veneration of the river deity and of the marine realm, or the marine as we call it in West African society and culture and tradition. We call it the marine, but it is of the water. And so the 𝗪𝗪 are like, these are all these water deities. It's not just one specific one, even though ultimately there is a supreme overlord of all things, Most High Divine Creator. But as we as we go up in rank, they fall under the jurisdiction of like how you have the knights are under the lords, and the lords are under the prince, and the prince is under the king, like that. So all that to say, this is, yeah, coming out on the other side of this process. And this one might be like a much bigger, deeper reading because it does have to do with the winter solstice. But leaving out of that dead world, and if you're still addicted to the drama, to being dead, to being calcified, I've talked about it in terms of like the 𝗪cie, also with like the White Walkers and their army of whites. If you're still addicted to being ran and controlled and manipulated and possessed, basically, as the whites were, the whites didn't have any autonomy. They were controlled as zombies, you know, by the White Walkers. Like, I guess in a way you could say like the vampire that sires all of these other vampires are kind of at the behest of the one who sired them, in this sense as well. We saw that in the film Sinners, and all of this to say, like, we're coming out on the other side of this. If you were willing to allow all of this to be purged of you, all of this karmic retribution. And this is why in the past week, I don't know if I talked about this in any readings. I think that I did, but I don't know, because it's something that I've been downloading a lot, but I haven't really been doing a lot of readings lately, at least not like online, really more so just for clients. But this idea of sorry, interference. Let me get back on that wave that I was surfing. Oh, rejecting, so I'll put it this way rather, the 𝗪cie manufactures consent, that it doesn't actually exist. It happens a lot through media, where it's like, we're inadvertently, it's just like with terms and conditions when you don't actually read it, but you say you agree to it or you allow it because like you want whatever it is, you're not bothering to read it. This happens through media a lot, or like when we choose to participate in things, and I've said this is fundamental to the Aetherium and to cosmic wellness, is when you choose to be a part of something, you take on the karma of that thing. So if you have been in a period of isolation, you're being, and it's been uncomfortable probably, but we are being protected from the karma of these people, places, things, institutions, groups, because first of all, when you incarnate into a family, you take on the karma of your family. You take on the karma of your tribe. You take on the karma of the group that you like join. If you join a gang, you take on their karma. Guilty by association, 100%, that's it. And also the gifts and the blessings. So for those of us who incarnated into fallen lineages, for those of us who incarnated into extremely karmic families, you know, perhaps we did that in order to take on the blessings, or perhaps we did that to transmute the karma of that family. But ultimately, what it comes down to is, for better or for worse, that's why when you marry someone, you better make sure that's what you actually really fucking want to do. You better make sure that's actually really what you want to do. Because when you couple up with others, or when you get into a group with others, you're taking on their karma. You're taking on their energy. Because as social animals, like, this in a biological sense, as primates, as social animals, we co-regulate one another, which is why I hate when people be like, nobody can make you feel anything. Yeah, they can. Because our bodies literally on a biological level co-regulate. That's why people who have menstruation cycles sync up. Your gut flora syncs up with those of the people around you. Consciousness is endemic. That's why we have a collective consciousness. So when people say that, that's BS. And that's one thing that I know, okay, this is 3355. This is a person who doesn't know what they're talking about. And this is someone that I'm not going to invest my time in listening to. Sure, they might have something to offer, but oftentimes they don't, because they don't understand human nature. They don't understand how humans operate. And usually have very frankly very harmful rhetoric that is aligned with abuse structures and abuse paradigms. So, you know, for me, I've never been a joiner. At a very young age, my mom realized that I was not going to join any teams, and I was not going to, I was part of a few clubs, but I never cared to be in clubs. I usually just had, a handful of friends. They oftentimes weren't even friends with one another, and, that's how I was, and that is, that's protection, because I'll give the example of the anime club. But she realized, don't bother trying to force me, because I'm not going to do it. Don't. I'm not going to do it. And so, I'll give the example of the anime club in high school, the friend group that I belonged to. I didn't really identify with most of these people. There were fundamental things of the person that I had to be when I was growing up there, of the character that was forced onto me, that they also related to. And I think also because we were all neurodivergent, perhaps without knowing it, we were all also of immigrant experience, whether immigrants or first gen, high achievers, definitely gate kids. But so there were a lot of that group of people. We had overlaps with the anime club, band, orchestra, theater. There were certain overlaps of the collective, you know what I mean? But the kids in the anime club, I liked anime and I liked manga, and some of my, one of my best friends was in the anime club, but I did not like the anime club because those kids were extremely promiscuous. And it's bro, we're 14 years old. What are you doing? And also none of them were attractive anyway, but they were all getting it in with one another. And I was absolutely not. And so even though some of those people were my friends, I was not going to join the anime club. I wasn't. Because at the core, I guess what I'm getting at is their values and principles were very different from what my values and principles were. And, they were all really good friends with one another, and I was more on the periphery. And that was fine for me because I had my main group. I was much more invested in my family and my culture and the other Liberians, and also my best friend group I knew from church, and we all went to different high schools, and we I think we all went to different middle schools and high schools, so I wasn't concerned about that. But I say this all to say, it's been a period of time, in this period of judgment and justice, in which we have been being called out of the wilderness and back into the light, into what I refer to as our pillar of light. We've been being called out of the wilderness. Just as Lot was called out of the wilderness, Lot made the decision, my granddaddy would be so proud of me. Lot made the decision to not be like the people in his town, which is not to say not because of homosexuality. It's actually because they were sexually assaulting people, and I don't understand how that just completely goes unnoticed. They were sexually assaulting people, and also it's very important to recognize that most of the things that are in modern times seen as being related to homosexuality in the Bible, that word up until the 40s, the 1940s, so very recently, actually translated to PDF file. That's what that word translated to. So take that for what you will, and this is why I say a lot of these people, like, if you don't understand the good grimoire because you're not actually, like, you can't actually decode it because it's not of your lineage, like, be very careful, because a lot of people out here who are becoming like, oh my God, I'm saved, oh my God, like, I've decided I'm a Christian. If you're not willing to actually study doctrine, don't go around trying to proselytize and talk about it. If you don't know the history of the church, of the Bible, of the lineage from which it comes even, don't go out here and try and act like you're an authority when you just read this thing for the first time a few years ago. If you think that you want to be an authority on the Christian religion, go to seminary. But if you don't know what you're talking about, don't talk, period. It's a lot of people who need to get some humility who are new to this spiritual community in the past 5 years. Meanwhile, others of us have been out here for decades. And I'm gonna let you rock, because a lot of you are accruing very, very, very heavy karma that you're not going to be able to pay off in this lifetime by leading people astray, and also by being complicit in extreme violence and, frankly, division and hate. At the end of the day, it is not of the divine if it is divisive. If it is not bringing us into integrity and into integration, into unity, into harmony, it is not of the divine. So if you're going around and thinking that being homophobic, transphobic, being a, nationalist, all of this kind of stuff, if you think that that is like Christ consciousness, I have a new thing for you coming, honey, because what you are is a member of a cult. And so when you join these things, you take on, this is why I don't identify with any institution. I'm Vie Darling, period. Because I'm not taking on anyone else's karma. I did enough incarnating into the family that I did. And that warfare, like, if you've watched the channelings and the downloads that I had a couple summers ago, when I was coming out of the wilderness, that warfare, that's enough. But I'm not taking on anybody else's karma. Don't try to link up with me. And this is what a lot of people will do. And a lot of people that I did readings for yesterday, this was their experience that they were like sharing with me, or I was like reading about and like helping them to realize how they can transmute this situation. People being magnetized to your light, attracted to your light, and wanting to sink their hooks in and drain you of your light. They're hoping that you'll save them. And that's why in another reading I did earlier today, we got the what is this? The King of Swords in the reverse. Particularly in this Tarot del Fuego deck, the King of Swords very much gives like martyrdom. I'll show you if I can find it quickly, but it very much, it very much gives martyrdom. And we have the rainbow here present as well. And that's not, and in the reverse, like, it's time to let go of that. In the age of Aquarius, we're not playing the martyr. Oh, well, I'm just trying to be nice. Fuck that shit. Don't be nice. Don't be trying to be nice. Be authentic, be honest, be real. Because Christ consciousness is the intersection between unconditional love and unconditional truth. That's that crossroads point. That's that cross. And yes, you will come under fire. You will come under attack by adversarial energies and entities. But you got to think about it like, what is more important? your spirit, your soul, your life, you know what I mean, overall, or your trauma response at the end of the day. So the thing that has been coming up for me a lot is like rejecting manufactured consent. I do not consent to that karma. I'm not taking that karma on, because a lot of what happens through the 𝗪cie architects using media oftentimes to, oftentimes in the media, but it's in all different realms. And it also happens a lot in the education system to offload their karma onto others. Where it's like, well, you know, exposition happens a lot through media, whether that's like movies or whatnot, and it's like, okay, well, we told them what was going on and they chose not to believe it, so, you know, my karma's clear. No. This is why we have to live our lives in truth, because a lot of people are paying for karma, the karma, the very heavy karma of very evil people, because they're not willing to reject that manufactured consent, and they are complicit. Being complicit, you will still be guilty by association, like I said. So Lot's wife turned into a pillar of salt. She couldn't escape with them because she was too busy looking back at, like, you know, the karmic life that she had been living. And I've talked about this before in other readings back, like, I would say a few years ago. I got a channeled message about Orpheus. And this is what I'm picking up again, right? Orpheus. What was his wife's name? 𝗪̇cie. And 𝗪̇cie died, and Orpheus went to the underworld to get her back, and she died of a snake bite. I think that this is really very potent story, but I'm going to try to keep it on, like, I'm going to try to stay to the point instead of like going down all these spirals, because I don't want this reading to go on past an hour, although I already know it's going to. 𝗪̇cie, so he went down, and as luck would have it, Persephone took pity on him, and he was the only mortal to return back to the land of the living from the land of the dead, or from the dead world, well, the underworld. And he was going to be allowed to bring her back with him, but he was told, do not turn around and look upon her face until you are both back in the land of the living. And what does this bimbo bozo do? Just as they're getting out, just as they get to the threshold, and this is why you see, like, this is why the crash out always happens, like, it's always darkest before the dawn. That's when temptation really strikes. And so this is why there was a lot of temptation in the past month or so. He turns around and he looks, and she disappears back into a shade and returns to the underworld, and he has to go on without her. There are so many stories across cultures that say, do not look back. Let me see, there's also Isaiah 43:19. I like the King James version. Go. I guess, yeah, now's the time when I can say, I think that the reason I say Yeshua instead of the other name is because the other name is not real. It's a manufactured artificial intelligence, you can say, and I believe that that's the Antichrist. And I believe that these institutions of religion are as they say in the book of Revelations, temple of Shaitan, if you will. They must be. They must be. Because as someone who grew up in the church and like wanted to go to seminary. Many people in my family are ordained. You know, I've shared about like my grandfather's position in the global church. It's like, it's vampiric, it's demonic, period. It's satanic, period. And so that's why I use that language. I definitely believe that that is the Antichrist. But behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. Shall ye not know it? I will even make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. It's crazy because all of these channeled messages are coming back from that time period. There's a song called Don't Look Down. It's from Good Fridays. If you know, you know. It's an I love this song so much. I would recommend going and listening to it. This is the artist best known as Mos Def and 𝗪ዀ𝗺. Ye is on it, Big Sean is on it. This song is from like 2010. Immaculate time in hip hop, I'm gonna tell you the truth. But don't look down, it's an impossible view. Fly like an eagle, whatever you do. Don't look down, it's an impossible view. Spread your wings, Ariel. Head to the sky, wings raised in. She's about to fly and take her place in. Out there in the stars, when she leaves the ground, she'll see a broken heart if she turns around. But ain't no going back, this is how it must be. He told her she'll be burned alive. She just told him, trust me. If funerals are beautiful, this ugly. Knowing this, he told her you won't leave me if you love me. And he knows that because he knows her. Hard to hide his feelings as it engulfs her. Now she's a bright blaze. Light rays are shooting out a phoenix sun, burning up the nightscape. So let's hear it for our heroine. Applaud as her spirit just flies into the never end. One closed chapter, it opens up another part. So this is more like the end, question mark. I love this song. I'm gonna listen to this song after I get off of here. And then don't look down, it's an impossible view. Don't let me hold you back, I'll only hold you back. We're on a dead end street. This block's got a cul-de-sac, so fly, baby, my baby, so high. Sometimes it's so hard to say bye. We made it from the alley straight up to the valet. We pulled up at the valet. We'll teach our daughter ballet. We'll raise us a Beyonce. Maybe she'll be a Halle. You would have been the best mom. I would have been the best. Yeah, you see it on my veins like 𝗪ǐ𝗪𝗀. I know that's very gross, but we getting very close to our end. Though I kill most with a pen. Soon as this flow, and I'ma let most begin. I'm just gonna leave it there. I would definitely recommend going and listening to this song, but it is the end, and we have to understand, and really beyond understanding, we have to overstand that, yeah, the people of the past, the karmics, are gonna crash out, as we said, because they're losing their light source. And remember, we're not talking about the light, the cosmic messenger, as in the particle wave, miraculous photon light. We're talking about light realms as in density. That's what we're talking about, because that's what the material world is. It is density. It is light that has slowed down so much that it is dense. Okay, and we're talking about sublimation. So overstand this. I would say overstanding is the ability to sublimate. If you cannot alchemize, you cannot sublimate. If you cannot sublimate, you cannot overstand, you cannot transcend, and period. So to get to this place of overstanding, and this is something I pray for. I prayed for that daily for the past couple of weeks, and it has brought me so much liberation, because liberation, alchemy is liberation. People think, oh, turning lead into gold, turning base material into gold. It's wisdom. Wisdom is the wealth of life, because guess what? You can have all the money in the world, be dumb as a brick, and lose all of it. But you can be wise and start out poor AF and make a lot of money. So a lot of the people that I was talking to yesterday, I had to explain to them, it's not on you, it's in you. You don't even have to be that physically good looking to be magnetic, and people will be attracted to you, become obsessed with you, be like, you know, wanting to feast on your energy, because They see that wealth in your spirit. They see you're blessed and highly favored. They see that you're anointed, period. And they know that that's not something that you can buy. You can buy a new face. You can buy a new body. Hella people do it every day. It's crazy how many people, especially very young people, are buying new faces and new bodies every single day. But guess what? You will never be able to buy. You will never be able to buy that anointing. You will never be able to buy being blessed and highly favored. Trust me. As much as these bad agents or bad actors, as they say, of the 𝗪cie are constantly trying to buy that stuff through their charities, through their fundraisers, Nope. I don't know why you thought you could play the Most High. I don't know why you thought that, but that's the insanity of these psychopathic people. When you see these billionaires, they're not narcissists, they're psychopaths. That's what that is. Realize the world that you're living in. Because if you're unhappy in your life, the reason why is because you're committed to living a lie. Have grace for the fact that, like, people, you know what, are only able to comprehend to the extent that they are. We have grace for that. And at the end of the day, you know, this overstanding, like, you gotta be in a place of, like, yeah, I get that, like, the karmics, they want, but you can't enable them. They have to grow strong on their own. If you don't let a child learn to walk, they're not going to know how to walk. They're going to be ultimately not paralyzed, but like one might think that eventually they could learn to, but they could experience muscular atrophy. I made this example where, like, when my niece was a baby, she did not want to walk. She did not want to be put down. She was so cute. Everyone wanted to carry her around all the time. She never wanted to be put down. So even though I learned to walk at 9 months old, that's pretty early, but she was past the age of 1 when she, like, learned to walk, or it may have been 7 months old, but that is actually part of why I have orthopedic problems now. But I started walking very early. She was past the age of 1 when she started walking, not because she was stupid, or, well, you can't call a baby stupid, not because she couldn't learn to walk, obviously she did, but because she didn't want to, and people enabled her to not have to by, like, she would, even if you tried to put her on the ground to help her to walk, she'd curl her little legs up under her body and refuse to walk and scream her head off. And you know, it's like those parents who, like, when their kid is pitching a fit, oh, I'm gonna give you whatever I want because they don't want my kid to, like, be upset. And this is why your kid is a spoiled, entitled brat who mouths off all the time. People need to learn discipline, but when we enable them, this is the 𝗪tože𝗿𝗀, PhD, writes about this in Women Who Run with the Wolves, the Too Good Mother. This is in the story of Vasilisa, I believe. It is also the Baba Yaga story. The Too Good Mother, who enables their child, then they never have the skills. They're never equipped to go out on their own and be the person that they need to be. This is Kali Ma, and this is the divine dark feminine that the world has been taught to revile and hate. Kali Ma, the mother that actually loves you enough to discipline you so that you can have the strength and the confidence in your power to be in your sovereignty. That's that narcissistic, codependent mother archetype. Not necessarily narcissistic, but codependency and narcissism are two different sides of the same coin. And at this point in my journey, I personally find codependent people to be far more infuriating because they're more insidious than narcissists. It's quite obvious. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I think that, like, the conversation where we are moving as a society is out of this acknowledgement of narcissism as an epidemic into the having needing the codependent to take accountability for the ways in which they contribute to the situation. And so it all comes full circle. But essentially, in this period, this crossroads period, because we've been in a crossroads period for a very long time collectively. It feels like a very long time. But you know, we've been in this crossroads period where it has been a lot, test after test after test, every choice that you make, and that can feel like a big burden, because free will is a big burden. But when you choose to incarnate into the free will realm, that's what you have to deal with. Okay? And so ultimately, I'm gonna do a newsletter tomorrow. I know I haven't in a while, but now I'm on break, I finally have time to do it. There's just some stuff that I like have been processing, that like I've been percolating, and I want to drop in some newsletters. So we'll get more newsletters in the coming weeks. But yeah, understanding that fuck them. You know what I mean? I'm like, fuck them kids. But like that ass, it's like, you know, when I took that final step into no contact with my family of origin over the summer, that includes, and I heard people say it like that, they're like, fuck them kids, but that had to include my niece. And I already like I already had put that boundary up with my nephew's mom, and I had that boundary with my brother. So I couldn't, I didn't have access to my nephew to begin with, or not to begin with, but at that point of time anyway. But like coming to the realization that like in order for me to fully heal, I also had to go no contact with my niece, which was one extremely painful thing to do, but I had to do it because ultimately the work that I'm doing in the spirit liberates her too. I'm doing this for all of us. I'm not just doing this for me. 7 generations in every direction. This liberation work, this abolition work. Okay? So just think about how many generations in every direction of your family, of your tribe, of your whatever group you're associated with, you let down if you're codependent, and that's really important to you, which is fair, because sometimes, you know, the only way, sometimes there are things that like if I wanted to, you know, go back to gardening, as they say, I know how many people look to my sobriety as an example that they are inspired by and that keeps them sober. And if I wanted to go back to, you know, smoking spliffs and selling edibles, I could do that. That's my free will choice. But knowing how many people I would let down, I choose not to. You know what I mean? So if you have to think of it that way, think about how many of your ancestors are fighting for you to get free, just for you to be codependent and an enabler and give up your freedom for someone who's a fucking loser, to be quite honest. So this song is about essentially like a woman who, like, it's her time to fly. She's in Phoenix mode. Like, she's burning her life down so that she can be reborn from the flames. This reminds me of Pentecost Sunday. But when the flames were above their heads. And this is representative of the crown chakra, the Sahasrara. I have such trouble like saying that word, but the crown chakra being open and being in your pillar of light, and everybody was able to understand one another telepathically. Like, it's literally in there, that like telepathic communication, because they were on a certain frequency that they were open to receiving and communicating on. The days to come, y'all are going to be blown out of the water by the things that are going to happen. I've said, I've seen magic that you would not believe literally mirror of 𝗪𝗱𝗱, Harry Potter type magic with my own 2 eyes, first hand. That's the kind of magic we have in my country. What y'all are about to see is not even half of that, and your people are gonna be, I mean, I really feel people are gonna be falling out of windows. Like, people are gonna be losing their minds. And that is a lot of what's happening, because that's what happens with the ascension. So it's really important to stay grounded right now. Get grounded, meditate, like, do what you gotta do to stay grounded. But as I said, in terms of the weekly energy, rest and be in your own energy. You know what I mean? Slough off all those other people's energy. If you cannot be alone, you need to learn, like, I mean, I don't even think my collective that I read for, at this point, I don't think you don't know how to be alone. Because the collective I read for, like, this is stuff that we've been hearing for a long time. Okay, so we talked about that. That's a lot of that, like, we talked about, I feel like we got into, I mean, I feel like this is a lot of the message. Hi. Are you Liberian, Kingface? I don't know who you are, but just a 𝗪𝗁𝗱. I'm like, are you Liberian? 645 on the timer. So yeah, leave them where they're at. If you're in a place of overstanding, that's when you're in the 5D Christ conscious, the 5D New Earth space. And when you're in the Christ conscious energy, when you're on the rainbow, you know, the rainbow bridge, Bifrost, when you're on the rainbow bridge, that's the purification, and that's painful, and that's hard, and that's what we've been going through. And people keep talking about, like, oh, that's the year of the snake, the shedding. Yeah, that's that painful stuff. And that's why, like, people I know in my spiritual community have been like, this has been the hardest year of my life. For me personally, in my recovery, I have had the hardest year of my recovery. And that is to say, I'm not ever going to sit here and be like, oh, this was the hardest year of my life. I literally was, like, living on a hellmouth, like, fighting for my life a few years ago. Like, no, this is not the hardest year of my life. I grew up in hell. So no, this is not the hardest year of my life, but it was hard. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it was hard. You know what I mean? This year kicked my ass. But I showed up for it. And I always chose my integrity as much as I possibly could. As much as I possibly could. It don't matter to me who doesn't like it. If you don't like it, that says more about you than it says about me. You feel me? And that's the courage that you have to be able to enter into that. It just is, period. So with the chart of the winter solstice, it's the surveillance for me. It's the surveillance for me. In any case, with the chart of the winter solstice, there are not a lot of aspects and interactions between the placements. We do have a, well, that's strange, because it's not a okay. We have a sextile between, I guess we can read it this way. Saturn and Jupiter. Am I bugging? Because that seems... what year is this? Oh, this was for 2020. I was like, yo, what? Let's run that back. Thankfully, a lot of what I channeled wasn't from that. Okay, I mean, it's not crazy. It's not too much. But, we do have a cat's cradle. There's a cat's cradle at the new moon that we were looking at as well. That was pretty important and worth looking at. But we have a opposition between Jupiter, Pluto in Capricorn, and the moon in Sagittarius. Jupiter, am I reading this right? I am. Jupiter retrograde in Gemini in the 3rd house. This is wisdom, and it is coming from introspection. I do think that a lot of the hiccups that are happening are for us to be faced with the discrepancies within ourselves that are keeping us from being aligned with wisdom. And the moon in Sagittarius, yes, there's an unveiling that's happening here. This is happening in the 8th house. That's that karma. But for me, it really is karma that we don't have to take on. It's other people's karma. It's guilt by association. It's really like, if you haven't already devised a plan or like let go of these karmic relationships that you know that you have to let go of, it's let go or be dragged season here. All right, these also, it's like our own personal behaviors and like, you know, karmic behaviors. I've been smoking cigarettes again lately. I was stressed out AF, and for me, and also a lot of people who are sober, it's like, okay, well, better I do that than do this other thing that can potentially kill me. You know what I mean? And yeah, it's one of my only acting out behaviors, so it is what it is, but I know that that's not something that I'm going to continue doing. And it's really not that hard for me to like stop. I just, being perfectly honest, I don't feel like it. I don't want to stop right now. The part of me that wants to stop is not as big as the part of me that doesn't want to. So when I'm ready to, I will, period. But I will say for other people, it's like, there are other things that, as I said, this period of temptation, other things where it's like, oh, like, you know, you might have way bigger problems in terms of like, maybe you need to stop drinking, but you're still doing it, and it's like obviously messing up your life, or you need to stop, you know, hooking up with this person in your situationship, but like you're not stopping doing it, but you're hyper fixating on something way smaller, or hyper fixating on other people's problems. Like, you need to reevaluate, because that's a karmic trap. In this Pluto in Capricorn, it really is about how we are disempowering ourselves in our like day-to-day behaviors and patterns. So these things are coming up, and I would say it's not ever so black and white. You definitely have to learn moderation and nuance, and how to navigate gray areas. To get the 3 of Pentacles, there is forward motion. We are building, but just be very mindful about who you're building with, because an eager beaver can be the collapse of the dam, is what I'm hearing. Loose lips sink ships is something that I also channeled this week. Like, if someone's a weak link, you're gonna want to know about that. Basically, we're as strong as our weakest link. Remember that. And that is to say, guilt, that's the same thing that I've been saying over and over and over in this reading. That's the overall message, I guess. We have a square between, well, right now we have Mercury and Venus in Ophiuchus, and I will be moving into Sagittarius probably, in terms of true sidereal astrology. And this is this rebirth of the divine feminine. Oh baby, Age of Aquarius is here. Yeah, I love that for us. So Venus in Ophiuchus, we have the Sun in Sagittarius, we have Mars in Sagittarius, and we also have Mercury in Scorpio. These are all very close to one another, but it's really more so the Venus, Sun, and Mars in the 8th house. They're all in the 8th house, and they're making a square to Saturn and Neptune, which are basically in, I think at this point it's an applying conjunction because they're both direct now in Pisces in the 11th house. Yeah, I think that really actually just speaks to everything that I've already been talking about and channeling. Once again, I don't actually need the cards. I don't actually need the chart. I'm a psychic medium. I don't need any of that stuff. So I don't feel like I really need to go over this stuff again, but I am saying that it's right here in the chart, what is happening. And that's why I also just feel like when people like fall off where it's like, oh, like, why isn't this person talking about the astrology? I am talking about the astrology. What do you mean? I am talking about the cosmic energy. Like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Yeah, this is the low point for those in the northern hemisphere. I do feel like a lot of people are going to be moving, a lot of people are going to be traveling because of this activation that's happening. All things in good and due time is what I'm hearing. But of course, you know, that makes sense because it's the holiday season, so it's like, yeah, well, that can be used to that, like, for that. And it's also like winter holiday for those who are in university and these kinds of things. So there's definitely always at this time a lot of traveling and moving and stuff like that. But I definitely get that it is related to what is going on here. And what I want to leave people with, the advice that I would leave you with is to continue to steadfastly affix yourself to your divine timeline, to your divine counterpart, to your optimal reality. And I have said this for a long time, that high vibe stuff, and I said this in my last channel message that I uploaded, but especially I've been saying it for a while, like that, oh my god, I'm gonna be high vibrational, oh my god, like high vibes. Mania is high vibrational. Do you think that being manic is something that's like a good idea? No, because what's gonna happen after mania is a depressive episode. Life has its ups and downs. That's insanity. You know what I mean? We are aiming for optimum timeline. It's important, as like my first practice was spell casting, and it is very important to be, especially as manifestors, we are all manifesting at all times, every single thing that we do. Every action that we take, I'm telling you. I did mention that we are entering into, I mean, if you get to 5D New Earth, damn, what is happening with my arm right here? 5D New Earth, then you've reached moksha. There are certain things that dead world cannot reach you anymore. But that was from our own free will choice of choosing to be in the land of the living, and we gotta let go of certain things. And so like I was saying, like there are certain things that I have had so much grief, the identity crisis that I had been having throughout my Saturn return, and like, you know, having to let go of wearing black, and still in this process of figuring out who I am. But I wanted it to happen immediately because I didn't want to let go of my previous style, in terms of like, even when obviously you can tell that I love hip-hop. I grew up on it. It's one of my hyperfixations. It is part of why I am a pop culture theorist, and there are other reasons why as well, but I'm not going to get into those things on this platform. That is for the adepts tier of my Substack, the Mysteries. But that's the paid tier. Subscribe if you want to. There's also a free 7-day trial. But in any case, I liked who I was at the time that I got sober, and I was 25. I didn't think that I was gonna stop gardening, but I decided to give it a try, and I decided that I liked life better fully sober. Like, I just liked how clear I felt. I liked life. My certain aspects of my neurodivergence, especially with my ADHD, was like no longer really like unmanageable. It made my life in certain ways, after the after the growing pains, it made my life a lot easier, and my powers a lot stronger as well. And I do think that's a lot of why like millennial culture is so heavily with like the cannabis. And I think that's the same thing with like, frankly, baby boomer of a certain generation, because baby boomer, that generation's like really long. It's almost 20 years long, which is insane. So I mean, I know I've like read accounts and like things that boomers have said from like different parts of it, where they're like baby boomers of this decade have a very different culture than baby boomers of this decade. And so I do think that the baby boomers who like were of the time of the hippies and bringing the Vietnam War to an end, psychedelics were a really big part of their culture as well. And that cyclically, I mean, this is like, anyway, I think about this is my hyper fixation, but like, certainly these are generally often the parents of a lot of millennials, and it's usually like, yeah, a lot of millennials have like the younger boomer as their parents, and so it's very similar culture and this like cyclical return of psychedelics being popular, which they were. I don't think that that's something that's super talked about when we talk about millennial culture necessarily at the time of like the 2010s, and when a lot of folks were like coming of age. But yeah, like, I mean, it was very, very prevalent and very, very it was at the forefront, really. Exploring consciousness, and like, I mean, I was reading Electric Acid Kool-Aid Test, and like watching, what is that movie called? Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and like all of this kind of like 70s like hippie nostalgia, and like beatniks, and like it's just a lot of that like recycled. Obviously like Fleetwood Mac was very popular with like with my generation, I would say, and so we're seeing this coming back again. But it's not by accident that those people who were very, very active were also having these psychotropic things, especially in terms of like, you know, acid and other psychotropic chemicals, if you will, that were made in a lab. I mean, this is a literal fact that LSD was a CIA project, and that's not by accident. So yeah, I say that all to say, and that's actually something, if you are subscribed to the mysteries, you know my what do I call it? Second Baby Cat. The Second Baby Cat, the first part of the Second Baby Cat series newsletter that is only available for the Adept here. I talk about that history in there. And yeah, that's not an accident. So, you know, you might think like, for me, it served a purpose in its time. It saved my life. I am only alive because of that. Also obviously my ancestors, and like, but they guided me to that because that's what I needed at that time, and that guided me, that kept me alive long enough to get to a place where I am able to be, you know, fully in my body as much as I possibly can be, and facing my demons and not running away from them, and not like, you know, checking out and like all this stuff. But yeah, it definitely, I know a lot of people think like, oh, it helps me in my practice, but the person who got me on the path of sober curiosity is the woman who wrote the book, Ruby Warrington. I met her at my job, and I was talking to her, And, you know, I didn't know who she was at first. I just thought she worked for the Numinous. I was like, oh my god, I love the Numinous. And she was like, I run the Numinous. And I was like, oh my god, like, I love you, you're so amazing. And we were talking about sober curiosity, and I was like, well, you know, like, I do use it as part of my practice because, like, it helps me tap in more. And she's like, she was like, she looked at me and she was like, do you really feel like you need to use alcohol to connect with spirit? And it was the way that she said it, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. And she sent a couple of copies of the book to my job. I took one and I read it, and the rest is history. Very, very shortly thereafter, I quit drinking. And yeah, a year and 4 months later, I decided that I was not gonna garden anymore, as they say. And that was the best decision I've ever made in my life. It will always be the best decision I've ever made in my life. Period. I really truly believe that. And if you think that you are powerful now and you're still gardening, you have no idea how powerful you can be. I will leave it at that. I love you all truly and deeply. I hope that this was helpful. I think I said the advice. Yeah, I did say the advice that I wanted to leave off with. And wow, I just split the deck again. Y'all saw that, and once again, 3 of Pentacles came out. We are building new earth, my friends. We are here now. I love you all truly and deeply. Trust the process. You're not being led astray. I just shuffled again. This is crazy. We got the 4 of Pentacles in the reverse. Of course, let it go. I've never seen that movie. I've never even heard that full song. But yeah, that part. 6 of Swords. It's not necessarily going to be a very easy week in terms of, like, you know, our thoughts and our feelings and stuff. There's definitely stuff that's surfacing to be purged, but you got this. Use your tools. Stay grounded. Ask for help if you need it. And just stay in your integrity. I will see you on the flip side. Consider subscribing to my Substack, 𝗪ዀ. It is in the description box below. Consider subscribe or following me on the Clock app. I haven't posted on there in a very long time. It is private right now. Because I need it to be. But if you write me and ask nicely, I will consider allowing you to follow. My personal website, as personal as in my artist website, is back up. I decided to pay for that. It was building a new website, but I don't have time for that really. And yeah, like I said, the link to book a session with me through my Ko-Fi is in the description box below. I'm not necessarily doing energy work right now, so if that's something that you're looking for, email me before booking an oracle healing session through Ko-Fi. Email me first, because I'm not really doing that right now, only on a special, what is it called? Case-by-case basis, like special, I don't know. Anyway, love y'all.